Proceed. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the media for joining us today. Today we are going to discuss the culmination of the investigative efforts into the murder of Debbie Dorian, which took place in August of 1996. The purpose of today's press conference is threefold. It will update you on the status of the cases that have been investigated and filed against Nicky Stain for the crimes he committed in both Tulare and Fresno County, spanning from the time period of 1996 through 2019. It will acknowledge the law enforcement agencies and the people who have worked tirelessly over the last 23 years to bring this criminal to justice. We will take the opportunity to recognize them, to thank them, and to congratulate all of them. And most importantly, we will hear from Sarah Levin, the mother of Debbie Dorian, the innocent young woman whose life was taken by Nicky Stain in 1996. There are many people standing behind me, and if I introduced all of them, we would be here all day. So I'm going to just introduce a couple people from each agency. But what you see behind me today is the culmination of 23 years of law enforcement collaboration and cooperation. These are only a handful of the people representing the agencies that have worked this case over the years. There are many more who are not present today or who have retired from their jobs. First of all, I would like to introduce a couple members from the Fresno Police Department. The Fresno Police has been the lead agency on this case from 1996 until today. Today we have Deputy Chief Pat Farmer and Lieutenant Larry Bolin. We also have several detectives from the Fresno PD Homicide Unit and Cold Case Unit. We also have two very special individuals who retired from the Fresno Police Department, worked at the Department of Justice Cold Case Unit, and are the two homicide detectives who never let this case or Debbie Dorian be forgotten. Detectives Vince Zavala and Bob Schodas are here. Both of these gentlemen continued to work this case after their retirements in 2016 to find the killer of Debbie Dorian. Both of these men requested on their own to do this work without compensation, and for the last 4 years have worked without pay to see this case to its investigative conclusion. I would like to thank both of them for their tireless dedication to Debbie and to justice. Gentlemen, today is the day that the family of Debbie, the Fresno Police Department, the Fresno County District Attorney's Office, and all of your brothers and sisters in law enforcement pay respect to you for your service and unwavering dedication. We also have partners here today from Tulare County. We have the Tulare County District Attorney Tim Ward. Also, we have representatives from the Visalia Police Department, including Chief Jason Salazar and Agent Jake Sorensen. We are very fortunate to also have partners here from the Sacramento County DA's office. We have Lieutenant Kirk Campbell from their Bureau of Investigations and Investigative Assistant Monica Sikowski. We also have some unsung heroes with us today from the Department of Justice Lab. Some of these people I've had the benefit of working with for many, many years. They are the reason that we are here today, because they are the people that bring the forensic science and the ever-improving technology regarding DNA to the courtroom. We have several people from the Department of Justice. We have Laboratory Director Delia Morales, Assistant Laboratory Director Caroline Garcia, Latent Print Supervisor Joe Escudero, if I'm saying that right, Latent Prints Analyst Vincent Guerrero, and Assistant Bureau Director here from Sacramento, Nikki Duda. Thank you so much for being here. Additionally, I would like to also introduce the prosecutor from my office who will be handling this case, Senior Deputy District Attorney Deborah Miller. She is a member of our homicide unit, and she has extensive expertise in prosecuting sexual assault cases. Before we begin discussing the charges and procedures, I would like to again offer my sincere condolences to Sarah, to Debbie's father, Peter Dorian, and her entire family and the friends that continue to mourn her loss to this day. As a mother, I cannot fathom the pain that this family has endured over the years, waiting for this day to come. Their daughter was lost in a violent, heartless, and vicious manner. Debbie Dorian was an intelligent, capable, and beautiful college student with a lifetime ahead of her. She had all the makings to be a successful and productive human being, but in August of 1996, she unfortunately crossed paths with an evil man named Nicky Stain. She was unaware of the fact that he would be a menace to her safety and eventually a menace to her life. On August 22nd, Debbie Dorian was found in her apartment deceased. She was sexually assaulted, bound at the hands and feet with duct tape. Duct tape was also wrapped around her head, covering her mouth, nose, and eyes. The Fresno Police Department began an investigation into her death, and after many, many years, interviews, and fearless determination, her killer was found. Over the years, scientific technology has provided those of us in law enforcement with new and ever-progressing set of tools. It is with these tools and the improvement of scientific technology that we were able to link the evidence found many years ago to the individual who will be accountable for this crime today. While Detective Zavala was working this case, there was a case in Northern California that involved a very high-profile serial murder. When he heard this information, he immediately contacted other law enforcement agencies and law enforcement officials to try to see if that same technology could help us in the Debbie Dorian case. While he was working with those detectives in Visalia, my dear friend and esteemed colleague, Anne Marie Schubert, who is the District Attorney of Sacramento County, called me on the telephone. She was very excited about the new technology and wanted to share the information with those of us working and living in Fresno. She volunteered to bring her staff down, and almost 100 law enforcement officials from this area converged at the Fresno Police Department Training Center and had the opportunity to be taught about these advances straight from her mouth. The District Attorney, Anne Marie Schubert, came down here and trained us. After the initial training, retired Police Chief Jerry Dyer walked up to Anne Marie Schubert and said, "I have the perfect case for this technology, the Debbie Dorian murder." And thus, between the efforts of Detective Zavala and the efforts of the then existing Fresno Police Department, the staff here in Fresno was sent up to Sacramento for additional training. Lieutenant Kurt Campbell, who is here with us today, I don't know where he is. There he is, right behind me. Thank you so much, sir. Lieutenant Kurt Campbell of the Sacramento County DA's office is one of the brilliant trainers who provided the Fresno team with the knowledge and information they needed to finally be able to put all of the pieces of this puzzle together and discover the identity of the perpetrator they had been searching for since 1996. Retired Detective Vince Davala is here today, and he is going to give us some greater detail about the work that was done in order to put this case together and bring it to the conclusion that we have today. Detective Zavala, please come up to the podium.
First and foremost, thanks be to God, after 23 years, 5 months, and 7 about to be made for the murder of 22-year-old Fresno State co-ed Debbie Dorian. It has been a long up and down journey, but the process of bringing justice for Debbie and her, if not for the many dedicated men and women in our law enforcement family, we would not be here today. Debbie's murder involved the evolution of law enforcement personnel. However, this transformation did not stop their desire for justice. It all started with the detectives first assigned to Debbie's case on August 22nd, 1996. On scene that fateful day was a young press information officer named Jerry Dyer. The Fresno Police Department detectives assigned to Debbie's case worked tirelessly until all immediate leads were exhausted. In 1995, I left the Fresno Police Department Homicide Unit and became an agent for the California Department of Justice here in Fresno. Within days of Debbie's murder, I began assisting the Fresno Police Department Homicide Unit on Debbie's case, since we had all worked together for many years. From August 22nd, 1996 to July 1997, I continued to work with Detectives Mike Garcia and Detective Bob Schodas of the Fresno Police Department Homicide Unit. Sometime in July 1997, after secondary leads turned up no suspect and the Fresno Police Department Homicide Unit was overrun with cases, I asked and was granted permission to take over the Dorian homicide investigation. Bob was still investigating homicides for the Fresno Police Department, so Bob and I continued to work on Debbie's case. If you were to Google best partner ever, Bob Schodas' picture would pop up. Bob and I have worked on and off together, mainly on, for the last 40 years. A Department of Justice criminalist by the name of Delia Fausto Morales was on scene shortly after Debbie was found and helped process the scene for evidence. In the mid-1980s, I was a detective assigned to the Fresno Police Department, Major Narcotics Unit, and Delia was a brand new criminalist. During the 1980s, Delia and I formed an unbreakable professional relationship that stands to this day. Delia moved up the ranks and became the lab director for the California Department of Justice Bureau of Forensic Services Fresno Regional Laboratory, which means she was in charge of the whole Fresno Regional Laboratory. Her responsibilities did not only include Fresno County, but included many surrounding counties. Delia never lost her passion for Debbie's case. Over the last 23 years, I have made hundreds of requests regarding evidence and analyzation and new DNA techniques from Delia and her Department of Justice lab crew. They have always gone above and beyond regarding any of my quests up until the end. On February the 25th, 2002, I was informed by our Department of Justice lab that a case-to-case DNA match had taken place between the DNA recovered from Debbie's case to a sexual assault that happened in the city of Visalia. That meant that DNA recovered from Debbie's crime scene matched DNA recovered from the Visalia case. The Visalia Police Department crime took place on July 30th, 1999. Because DNA technology was in its infancy stage at the time, there was a delay in notification of this match. The Visalia Police Department sexual assault case was linked to several other sexual assaults that happened in the city of Visalia. On February 25th, 2002, upon learning of this case-to-case hit, I immediately responded to the Visalia Police Department, where I met Sergeant Steve Puder and a young detective named Jason Salazar. We briefed each other on Debbie's case and the Visalia Police Department's related cases. Detective Salazar soon promoted out of the investigation division and is currently the chief of police for the Visalia Police Department. Jason never lost his passion for these cases. Sergeant Steve Puder and I followed up on hundreds of Visalia leads until Steve retired. I eventually convinced Bob Schodas to join the Department of Justice. Once Bob joined, we continued to investigate Debbie's murder. Bob eventually retired, and I continued to investigate Debbie's murder until my retirement. I promised Sarah, Debbie's mother, that when I retired, I would ask Chief Dyer to allow Bob and I to investigate Debbie's murder without compensation. Chief Dyer granted this request. The DNA recovered from Debbie's crime scene was immediately entered into the DNA index system, CODIS, and has been routinely run for the last 23-plus years, with no match being found. In addition to CODIS, from 2009 to 2018, we entered this DNA into every law enforcement database known to law enforcement multiple times, with no match being found. In July 2018, while my wife and I were babysitting my grandson, I received a telephone call from Delia. She told me no match had been made regarding our most recent familial DNA match. Disappointed, I began to weigh our options on Debbie's case and wondered what else Bob and I could do. Then a thought came to my mind: Golden State Killer. I thought, why couldn't we use the same technology used to capture the Golden State Killer? I knew that the Visalia Police Department was part of that investigation, so I immediately telephoned my friend, now retired Lieutenant Steve Puder. I ran my thoughts by Steve, and I noted the excitement in his voice. Steve said he would call me right back. Steve put me in contact with the Visalia Police Department detective who was part of the Golden State Killer Task Force. That was Detective James Cumming. James told me he'd been thinking the same thing about putting Debbie's case and the Visalia case on the same track as the Golden State Killer. James immediately put me in contact with Visalia Police Department Detective Jacob Sorensen. Jacob was in charge of the Visalia Police Department cases that were related to Debbie's murder. While working at the Department of Justice, I worked with Jacob's father. During that time that Jason's father and I worked together, I'm guessing Jacob was about 3 to 5 years old. We then started the process used to capture the Golden State Killer. During this process, numerous meetings took place involving the Visalia Police Department, the Fresno Police Department, the Fresno Department of Justice Lab, the Fresno County District Attorney's Office, and support personnel from the Visalia Police Department and the Fresno Police Department. In addition, we were privileged to have the Sacramento District Attorney's Office lend a huge hand. During the process, during this time, District Attorney Investigator Danelle Isaac was assigned to Debbie's case. I discovered Danelle's father and I graduated from Fresno State at the same time, and we were friends. We were also hired at the same time as deputies for the Fresno County Sheriff's Department. I estimated during the time that Danelle's father and I worked together, Danelle had not been born. In October of 2019, all previously mentioned agencies conducted an operation in Visalia. Bob and I were present during that operation. Both of us commented on the dedication and professionalism displayed by all individuals involved. In addition, the Fresno Police Department Homicide Unit was unwavering and dedicated to their commitment in doing everything humanly possible on Debbie's case. Actions by all individuals involved made Bob and I proud. We have communicated with Debbie's family for the last 23 plus years. Debbie's mother, Sarah, and I have communicated on average of 2 to 3 times a month for the last 23 years. I don't know if Debbie's family will ever have closure. I do know that the wounds to their hearts will never completely heal. My hope, our hope, is at the very least we have provided answers to the family, and the person responsible for these unimaginable crimes will finally feel the total weight of our Justice Department. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Detective Zavala. Based on this information and the investigative efforts described, at the conclusion of this press conference, Detectives Zavala and Shodas will be walking a criminal complaint over to the Fresno County Superior Court for filing. This criminal complaint will allege that Nikki Stain committed the following crimes in the county of Fresno in August of 1996. Count 1, first-degree murder, alleging the murder of Debbie Dorian was committed by Nikki Stain while he was engaged in the crimes of forcible rape and sodomy. Count 2, forcible rape, with allegations of great bodily injury being inflicted upon the victim, Debbie Dorian. Count 3, sodomy by use of force, with allegations of great bodily injury being inflicted on the victim, Debbie Dorian. The crimes alleged in Count 1 qualify under the California Penal Code for special circumstances murder, which makes Nikki Stain eligible for the penalty what is commonly referred to as LWOP, or life without the possibility of parole, or the death penalty. The determination of whether to seek the death penalty in this case will be made after the preliminary hearing is conducted. As you have been informed previously, the defendant Nikki Stain is currently in the custody of the Tulare County Sheriff in the Tulare County Jail. The charges he is facing there will be transferred to Fresno County through full cooperation of the Tulare County District Attorney Tim Ward. We are permitted to file these charges in Fresno County for crimes that occurred in Tulare pursuant to Penal Code Section 7. I would like to invite DA Tim Ward to the podium to speak about the investigation that occurred in Tulare County and the generous agreement of the Tulare County District Attorney's Office to waive jurisdiction and allow these cases to be prosecuted together with the murder and sexual assault of Debbie Dorian that took place in Fresno in 1996. DA Ward.
Good afternoon. Thank you, District Attorney Tim Ward. It's a privilege and pleasure to be here. I want to thank District Attorney Smitkamp for that opportunity. I would not be here and I would not be explaining where we're at without the gratitude or without the dedication and commitment of the Visalia Police Department. To the chief that is here, the agents and the detectives that are standing outside this room, I applaud you and your work. It's also simply an honor and a privilege to stand literally next to Ms. Loven this morning or this afternoon, who I had the pleasure of meeting earlier today. I want to give you a little bit of procedural background and the role that the Tulare County District Attorney's Office and the Visalia Police Department had in bringing us to where we are today. Starting in late 1999 and early 2000, prosecutors from our office worked alongside committed detectives from the Visalia Police Department in an effort to seek justice and solve a series of what were at the time violent sexual assaults that had rocked the very fiber of the community, the city of Visalia that we live in. based upon the collaborative work of not only the Visalia Police Department, but our partners that you see assembled here today, a DNA sample was obtained, as you heard, in August of 2000. Yet the name and the identity and the location of that perpetrator remained anonymous for years. We now know the identity and the location of that perpetrator was hiding in plain sight in our city all along. Based on some of the potential charges the investigation had uncovered, the applicable law at the time meant that action needed to be taken to preserve the right to seek justice in the case and the charges of the crimes that the Visalia Police Department had submitted to us. The reason for that hinged upon the fact that some of the crimes charged had a maximum statute of limitations that would have expired or told after 10 years from the date of those crimes. Simply put, time was not on our side. On July 1st of 2009, the Tulare County District Attorney's Office filed a felony 8-count complaint covering 4 separate incidents which were investigated by the Visalia Police Department. They spanned a period of time from July of 1999 to January of 2002. The complaint contained a number of special allegations, one of which included an allegation that a firearm was used in each of the crimes. That complaint enumerated several violent sexual charges such as felony sexual battery while restrained, kidnapping with the intent to commit oral copulation, and forced oral copulations. The complaint at the time listed the identity of the perpetrator as John Doe, along with a physical description and a DNA profile. At that time in 2009, a no bail warrant was issued. This practice is commonly called a John Doe warrant or a John Doe case. According to the records that we have available to us today, this case was the very first such John Doe warrant ever filed in Tulare County. In October of 2019, after developments in new technologies and new strategies, which you've heard a little bit about today, the Tulare County District Attorney's Office filed an amended complaint reflecting the defendant's true name and true identity. Defendant Stain was arraigned on those charges in Tulare County and remains in custody, as you heard, on that case on a no bail warrant in Tulare County. As of today, I, as District Attorney of Tulare County, have consented in and approve of the transfer of jurisdiction of the Tulare County cases in their entirety to join the charges here in Fresno. We have full faith and confidence in the men and women of this office and the team that District Attorney Smitkamp has assembled. This decision is based primarily on 2 factors. One, and first, would really be, while the defendant is entitled to an absolutely fair trial, it seems only logical and it seems only appropriate that one jury gets to hear all the evidence and they get to hear all of the conduct that is presented and Mr. Stain is accused of committing in one consolidated quest for justice. Second, to continue to prosecute our cases in Tulare County would necessitate a delay in the quest for justice that Debbie Dorian's family has waited far too long for. Justice should not be delayed for any of the victims connected to this individual. Therefore, consolidation in our mind seemed only appropriate and only right. Our office has been in contact with the victims and families involved in our cases. We have explained to them the situation. We explained to them the transfer, and I can tell you that they continue to be supportive of the quest for justice, and they look forward to a resolution in this case. In closing, let me say, in this case and with many cases across our state and across our nation, it is clear that genetic advancements were the best and most effective investigative lead we've had in over 20 years. Today is not a resolution, though, by any means. It's simply another step in the pursuit of justice, but make no mistake, we are fully committed to that complete justice and unified justice and a unified pursuit, and we will not waver. To anyone watching at home or online, let me say this. If you or someone you know have been a victim of a violent crime, know this. You are not forgotten. Please do not give up hope. Do not give up if your case has not yet been solved. As science and as technology evolve and they expand, the space for criminals to operate will get smaller and smaller. It's my prayer that the same doors of justice which have opened here today will open for you and your family at some point. It's only appropriate now that I give one final admiration and heartfelt thanks to Chief Salazar, who, as you heard, was a detective on this case. But for the dedicated work that the men and women of that office did, not only in this case, but continue to work for our department and me as a resident of the city. Jason, I can't thank you enough for what you do. We would not, again, be here without you. And we are fully committed to partnering and assisting with the Fresno County District Attorney's Office in any way. This is a unified search for justice.
Thank you so much, DA Ward. Based on the cooperation that we have received from Tulare County and the District Attorney in that county, the Fresno Police Department will be transporting the defendant Nikki Stain to the Fresno County Jail on February the 5th. On February the 6th, defendant will be brought to Department 33 of the Fresno County Superior Court to face arraignment on the criminal complaint that will be filed today. At this time, before we take questions, I would like to invite Sarah Loven to the podium. She is the mother of Debbie Dorian, and she would like to say a few words.
Okay. It's just a broken foot. It's going to get better. I would like to read a letter from Deb's dad, Peter Dorian. He wasn't able to come. He says, I unfortunately am not able to be here with you today. However, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to Detectives Vince Zavala and Bob Schodas for their dedication in solving this crime. Their professionalism, sincerity, and personal devotion is to be admired and given special recognition. I don't believe that my daughter's killer would have been discovered without these detectives more than 23 years after Debbie's death. This has changed our lives altogether. Finding the killer won't bring her back, but justice must be served and the murder removed from society forever. It seems like we are all together on this because I wrote my information over where I live, separate from everyone here, but we all seem to feel a unification that's almost a repeat of what we've already said. During the 23 years of waiting and searching, there have been so many people working and praying to solve Deb's case. The Fresno Police, Fresno Chiefs of Police, detectives, evidence processors, forensics, lab technicians, DNA labs, secretaries, mayors, victim witness, computer researchers, all dedicated and seriously committed. Department of Justice agents Vince Zavala and Bob Schodas were not going to let this case go unresolved. After a lifetime of detective work and 20 years working on Deb's case, they still had leads they wanted to pursue. They requested to continue working on her case and petitioned the Fresno Police Department, the police chief, and Fresno City Council to let them complete this work without pay. They have been working over 3 years, their sacrifice to preserve and continue this case. The family had also hired private detectives. California state governors, senators, representatives, profilers, DNA labs, they all worked hard for so many years. The governor approved a $50,000 reward, and the family added another $10,000 for a total of a $60,000 reward, hoping someone would come forward with information. Mike Reynolds was instrumental in giving us support and securing this reward. Time after time I heard, we are praying for a resolution of this case and justice for Deb. Citizens Against Homicide raised money to place 12 billboards in Fresno and nearby communities. Viacom owned the billboards and actually gave us the space at their cost. This has never been done before. We placed posters in Fresno, surrounding counties, prisons, jails, workplaces, police departments, and colleges. We searched for any person or place that Deborah might have known. Almost 12,000 days of waiting, searching, hoping, disappointments, and frustrations. So you want to know how I feel about the arrest of Deb's murderer. Expressing how thankful I am doesn't touch the depth of my gratitude. Please take the word closure out of your vocabulary. It is an irritant to those who have lost a loved one. What this arrest has finished is the struggle to always be searching. We will get some answers now and probably hear things that we don't want to hear. But we will honor our precious, beautiful daughter and see this through. I am eternally grateful to God for his mercy and grace. He has walked with us through this journey, held us up when we were discouraged, and gave us hope. He gave us strength, wisdom, and discernment as we tried to solve this million-piece puzzle. He gave us guidance and hearts to persevere. Now I will see justice for Deb before I die, and one more evil person will not be able to hurt others. The walk has been painful and changed my life. The next part of our journey is to follow through with the trial, making no mistakes or legal errors that would affect the outcome. We will unite in prayer and follow God's lead. He is the one who has brought us through this and will protect and guide us. Thank you to everyone who supports and prays for justice for Deb. Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah, thank you so much for being here today. Many of us that work in law enforcement are asked every day, how do you do it? How do you face it? How do you continue to know and read and see all of the horrific things? And I think I can speak for everybody up here who wears a badge. The reason that we do it is because of people like you and people like Debbie. It is an honor and it is a privilege to serve you, and we will be honored and privileged to serve your daughter. So at this time, I'd like to ask the media if there are any questions. We can be available for some questions.
Was there any connection to Dorian and Maybe Stain? Did they know each other?
I think that that's a question that we will probably reserve. That's an investigative question. Maybe we're probably not going to answer those questions. We don't want to do anything to affect the jury, but I think suffice it to say there's no connection between them.
Does the complaint already have the Tulare County charges, or do those still need to be added when we look at the complaint that is being watched?
DA Ward transferred the jurisdiction to us today, so those allegations are contained in the criminal complaint that will be filed immediately following this press conference.
And will he have to be, Stain have to be arraigned on the Tulare County charges again?
We will probably re-arraign him just procedurally because they are being brought into a new jurisdiction and contained into a new criminal complaint.
There's a lot of talk about DNA evidence. What exactly was the DNA and how were you guys able to connect it?
So there was a profile taken from Debbie Dorian's crime scene at the time of the murder. There were also other crimes that were committed in subsequent years in Tulare County. And in some of those cases, there were DNA samples that were also collected. Those were put into a computer, and at different times during the timeline that has gone on, they come up with profiles. There's probably a lot of people here that are a lot more. Do you want to take that question? Do you want me to just keep going? All right, I can just keep going. So profiles were, I felt a little twinge over there. So profiles were created, and as DA Ward indicated, in Tulare County, what they did to preserve the jurisdiction of the cases was file a John Doe warrant. So from the DNA profiles that were taken from the cases that occurred in Tulare, they were able to tell that obviously that they were male. They were a male donor, if you will, of those samples. And what they were able to discover in 2002 through the work of Detectives Shodas and Zavala is that the same profile for the Debbie Dorian sample was the same person, the same DNA profile that was collected in the cases in Tulare County. So for that time period, we knew that the same person had committed the crimes based on the DNA. the identity of that person was not known until the technology improved, and the DOJ people did their magic, and we were able to confirm, in fact, through surveillance and police work and other information and investigative techniques, that in fact the person who belonged to the DNA profile from the 1996 murder and the cases in 1999 to 2002 belonged to Nikki Stain. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, there's a lot of different ways to get DNA too. If there, you guys were saying what kind of a DNA sample it was.
You'll have to just watch the trial.
Okay.
It starts on the 6th. Okay.
Lisa, does Nikki Stain have an attorney?
I do not know that. He has not been arraigned in Fresno yet. DA Ward might be able to answer that question.
Currently in Tulare County, we have had a number of court appearances. He is represented by counsel in those proceedings. So.
Can you say who that is?
I could if I knew. Offhand, I just don't know. I can get that information for you. It's a matter of public record in the Tulare County record. So.
Also, you talked about a delay if these two cases were tried separately. Explain a little bit as to why that would cause a delay.
Sure. Let's take in just simply a chronological order. If Tulare County had filed the first case, as you know, the wheels of justice do not turn quickly enough for victims and their families. If we were to continue prosecuting the case in Tulare County and see it all the way through preliminary hearing and then all the way through to trial, that could easily be years or more, right? That would inevitably delay Debbie Dorian's family from their bite at justice. They've waited long enough not knowing who the perpetrator was. Now that question has been answered. They deserved a right to have that individual held accountable. Likewise for our victims. If we were to simply take a backseat to Fresno County, and seriously, based on the seriousness of the charges, you could easily see where that would be appropriate. That means our victims in Tulare County would then have to wait to the conclusion of this case for their case to be heard. So that's why I say it's not just a partnership, but it's a committed effort from District Attorney Smitkamp and our office as well. And it's only appropriate that one jury hear all of the incidents, all the facts in this case. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
We were able to confirm that he was a Lyft driver, and so speaking to that, knowing that a man of this nature with these kind of charges, any reaction to that, or have you guys looked into any of that to see if there could be any sexual assaults that way?
Yeah, I think it's a valid question, and certainly it raises everyone's concern to make sure that the investigation is thorough. But however, our focus right now collectively is on a fair trial and a fair process, and that's simply getting into a little bit too much of the weeds, and it's only appropriate that we allow that information to be fleshed out in the authentic way in the criminal proceeding. So, but we are aware of the investigative efforts of all the law enforcement agencies here. So.
Is it possible or expected that Tulare County victims would testify in Fresno County during the trial here?
That is absolutely what we anticipate will happen. We've already notified our victims of that possibility. Our office and our victim advocates remain committed to assisting in any way we can. So.
Now, Nikki Stain went under the radar for decades. Was there something other than the technological advancements with the DNA technology? Was there something like a family member did a DNA test, or you to Nikki Stain?
I think it's fair to say, and Chief Salazar, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's fair to say that the perpetrator, the identity of the DNA was hiding in plain sight all along. But for the advances in science and the teamwork and the collaboration and really what Sacramento brought to the table, I don't know that we would be here without their efforts. So when District Attorney Smitkamp thanks our colleague Anne Marie Schubert and Lieutenant from Sacramento, that should not go unnoticed. We would not be here but for the advances that they've made. So.
Just speaking, there's a few, cold cases in Fresno that really everybody in the community wanted to know what happened. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? This was one of them. And years after the fact, I mean, even with the detectives working on their off time, can you guys speak to how big of a just knowing, thinking that you know who did this, how important that was?
Well, it's important to the family, it's important to all the victims in Visalia, and it's important to us. And it's important to the public. So yes, it is important.
And I think, you know, one of the other things, and people have asked me this question a lot, is how do certain cases get priority over other cases? You know, and I think this is something that's very important for the public to know, is that law enforcement officials and law enforcement officers come to crime scenes after they happen. And there are people at those crime scenes. And in different places, in different geographic areas all over the nation, we have the same problem, is when we get there, a lot of people don't want to talk. And so what makes cases viable for continued investigation is community participation, is citizens helping us. Sometimes one lead, one piece of information through whatever way that might come, through a Crime Stoppers tip, or through an anonymous tip, or through an interview that somebody might do with law enforcement personnel, is very important, because it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, everybody wants to live in a safe community. And so it's very important that we continue to have people, and if there are people, as DA Ward said, who have been victims, don't give up hope. But also, if you know information about a cold case, if you know information about something that you saw years ago, it never hurts. It can always help. And that's how we build these cases sometimes, is from little pieces of information and little pieces of puzzle that come along through the years. And as Sarah is a perfect example, is that parents and family members of people who are lost to homicide never forget. And despite the fact that all of us are taxed and all of us are overworked and all of us are understaffed, we don't forget either. This is our work. This is why we are dedicated. Every person that stands behind me here could work out in the private sector. They could make more money. They could have better benefits. They could have more vacation time. They could have less stress with the skill set that they have. Cops can open up their own private investigations. These people that work at DOJ could work for non-governmental agencies or pharmaceutical companies. Lawyers can work at private firms, but we don't. We do this because we're dedicated. We're dedicated to people like Debbie, and we're dedicated to people like Sarah, and we do it. And God calls us, some of us, all of us, in some way. Somebody calls us to do this. If it's not God for people, it's somebody else. But I know for me personally, that's what it is. And so we can't do it without cooperation from the community. Any other questions?
I know you can't say what the evidence is, but how certain are you that that DNA match is Nikki Stain?
This is where I'm trying to say something that I don't want to say. It's Nikki Stain. I would bet my left leg it's Nikki Stain.
I don't know if you feel comfortable, but Sarah, I mean, just when you found out the news that, I mean, it's been years to find out the news, was that almost, what was that feeling in that moment?
Well, at first you can't believe it. You know, you've been searching and searching, but I knew that Vince and Bob wouldn't just tell me something that wasn't true. And so you're so joyful that it's happened, and sad reason that it happened, and you just go, every single emotion you have goes like this. It's just up and down and up and down, and it's crazy time. But, you know, the joy of having this is coupled with the sadness of why. Yeah.
Did your family feel, I mean, a lot of support, even from the detective saying, we want to find out what's going on?
Yeah.
How did that feel for you and your family?
My family is rejoicing. Yeah, my family is rejoicing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's 23 years is just a really long time. Yeah, so, yeah.
Is there anything that, you know, that you wish that you, there was a lot of life ahead of your daughter.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wish that you could tell her, or anything that?
Well, I tell her I love her every day, so I think she knows. And, you know, you miss seeing her wedding. You miss seeing the holidays. You miss, what did she grow up? What would she look like? You know, she was a feisty, wonderful person. You knew when Deb came in the room, she was beautiful. And, yeah, that's just the way she was. Yeah.
Are you just taking it all in today, how it, you know, getting to this point, or did you ever think you'd get to this point?
I always prayed that it would be before I die. You know, I knew that God would take care of it when he needed to take care of it. And for whatever reasons he's had, it's now. And so we'll follow now. Yeah, we knew. Yep.
What went through your mind when you got that call?
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Yeah. We knew it's, you know, going through the trial is not going to be a picnic. It's not going to be easy. But thank goodness. You know, I've always felt for all of the young women that were molested, and it's horrible to be a young woman and all of a sudden be in pain and scared to death. And why? You know, why are you so evil? I don't know. Yeah. But thank goodness. Yeah.
What's your message for other parents that are in your situation, that they're still seeking for justice?
Mm-hmm.
What's the message that you will give them?
Keep your faith. It's a test in the sense that it's easy to give up, you know, especially after time goes by. You just like, well, maybe it's not going to happen. Maybe I should put it aside, not think about it. It won't make me sad if I just put it aside and don't think about it. But keep your faith. It will. It's, you know, to think that there's a powerful God that pays attention to your needs, and you're a teeny tiny speck on the earth, and there are lots of needs out there. But to think that he really loves you and he really walks with you, it's just overwhelming, totally overwhelming. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for answering those questions.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay.
How did Mickey Stain stay off the radar for so long? I mean, obviously he committed numerous crimes.
Well, that's a good question. I think if you look at the dates of the complaint, you know, Debbie's murder was in 1996, and the allegations that we have him charged with in Tulare County range from 1999 to 2002, and then there's a break, and there's another crime that's alleged to have occurred in 2019. And I think that sometimes it's just one of those things where people like Nikki Stain are not unintelligent, and they have an ability to have predatory type behaviors, and they're able to hide, whether that's doing a good job concealing their appearances, or just being pretty crafty about the way that they commit their crimes. There were several women in Tulare County who he violated sexually, who were not able to identify him, and because maybe he didn't have a criminal history, there were no mugshots, there were no booking photos. Law enforcement didn't have the tools that they needed, but as time went on, he was brought to justice, and this is the beginning of that phase of the process now. So I think we can wrap up. If anybody has any other questions, we'll be happy to answer one or two more. If not, thank you so much for being here today.